Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Micah with CoronavirusDiaries, and today we've got a special treat. I have Dr. Andrew Scarbrough, who is a clinical psychologist who is currently in practice. So without giving too much of his background, we've known each other for my entire adult life. I've known Dr. Scarbrough, and he was kind enough to jump on the show. So without further ado, Dr. Scarbrough, please give the viewer, listeners, a little bit of a background about who are you and what you're on the show for.
Yeah. So, like you said, I'm a clinical psychologist. I've been practicing for quite a few years now. I got a double major in general and applied psychology. I got a master's in psychology, and I got a doctorate in psychology. I got licensed, and right now my role is mostly therapist. I work providing clinical psychotherapy for people. I am also very well trained in psychological assessment. I do a lot of different assessments as well. But I would say right now I kind of just prefer the route of therapy, and I think I'm pretty good at it. I work with a lot of different populations. I'm a generalist, so most mental health diagnoses are in my scope of competence. There's a few that are specialty that I don't know as well. You can't know everything, of course, but anxiety, depression, PTSD, OCD, any type of anxiety disorders, severe persistent mental illness like schizophrenia, personality disorders. There's a lot of different kinds of personality disorders, but all of that would be within my wheelhouse. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I've had the luxury of kind of watching you as you've progressed through your career and all your education, and we've had some really cool conversations over the years, and
Yeah.
you always seem to have some really cool insights on stuff. Like I'll pitch you random like conversational topics, and I get to learn some stuff, and that's really what I'm looking for here. Is let's dig into this whole COVID thing, right? You're a psychologist. A lot of people are, we're going to be dealing with extended durations, kind of in close quarters, potentially, depending on if people are in large cities that are hit really bad, and they make, they keep calling it like lockdowns or quarantines or shelter in place, whatever it is. There's going to be these elements of people being stuck in confined spaces, potentially with the other people in their house or roommates for long durations of time. And then that's not even including what's going on around them, which is this unseen enemy of, a virus that, 80% of people can have it and have mild to no symptoms. And then there's this other subset where it can be very, very significant. And let's just jump into it, man.
I think the social psychology aspects of it are pretty interesting. It's interesting that everybody in the world, all at the same time, whether or not you believed it, it's everybody had a thought about their mortality. I think every single person almost at the same time thought, oh no, could this be it? Could this be how the world ends? And you think about it logically, you're like, no, this isn't going to be what takes the world out. But everybody kind of had that thought about their mortality. And it's crazy. I kind of initially was kind of laughing it off. And I remember this cat here, he was like texting me stuff like all the time, like mortality rate's 8.4% in Italy, and like all of these things. And you were like, go buy toilet paper. I was like, man.
Come on now. I didn't say go buy toilet paper. I said,
well, okay, but here's the thing. I'm going to make you feel a little bit better too. Because I went to Target, and then I looked down at the toilet paper aisle, and the toilet paper is our god now, right? Like everybody's like, oh no, am I going to have enough toilet paper?
This is supposed to be a comfort thing,
I'm
right?
loading up my cart. I'm like multiple packs of toilet paper. And then I remember doing this kind of like hurried sprint and like cutting off old ladies to get to the canned food and like bottles of like the water packs.
Obviously, like, a little bit exaggerated.
But a little bit exaggerated. I'm not like pushing old ladies down in Target as I go for the last roll of toilet paper or anything. But it was funny too. I felt kind of ashamed as I'm sitting there like with my cart like packed to the gills, rolling out of the store. And I was like, just earlier that day, I was kind of making fun of people who were doing this kind of doomsday prepping stuff. And I contributed to the problem. They went on the news last night and they said, it's not like the toilet paper, like people can't make enough toilet paper. It's that everybody's hoarding it. And you look at people like loading up packs of toilet paper, you see the aisle depleting, and your survival instincts kick in, and it's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna like? Am I gonna run out of food? Am I gonna, have to come up with creative methods to, clean myself
Sure.
off
Yeah.
after
Yeah. Like who
functions or,
knows?
yeah. So
Well,
it's crazy. A little bit of panic, and it sort of like spreads like wildfire.
so something I was considering is like I recently just moved myself, and I had moved multiple times actually in the last few months, just due to kind of changes in my own world. Prior to that, it had been traveling a bunch, right? For like the last 3 years, traveling
Mm.
significantly, living abroad. So I had reduced my footprint to the point of really just I had a carload full of stuff, and if I had to, I could have survived, with a couple of bags on my back, but I found myself following this since around mid-January, like really like kind of starting to pay attention because I was seeing how it was progressing over in China, and I'm like, man, I can't imagine, a foreign like government like China taking the actions they were unless they were, who's going to tank their own economy for something that they're like, oh, it's probably not a big deal, right? So I saw
Yeah.
that, and then I started looking around at my own situation, going, for the most part, I'd been living but for the week, right? Like I would have the stuff in my fridge and my cupboards, and like, I'd rely, half of my meals would typically be like, I'd go out and grab some pho, or I would grab a sub, or, something out. And then
Yeah.
if I'm going to make anything, it's not that significant. Well, suddenly, there's this paradigm shift of you might not be able to go out, or you may not want to go into a public, grocery store in the event that it's spreading like wildfire. Like I'm not entirely concerned for myself. I feel like I'm in decent enough shape, but there's a lot of weird stuff that's coming out in terms of the people that are getting impacted, and it's starting to seem like, yeah, sure, it will go after older people and those with pre-existing conditions, but nonetheless, I don't necessarily want to be having to go back to stores regularly every week. So I think a lot of us, that live the week to week life, of
Yeah, I did
having,
too.
yeah, like you have to put that much stuff in your cart. You have to fill it up with canned foods and noodles and all the things to survive a month, based on what they're saying. They're saying you don't, if you at all possible, stay indoors, don't go out. So then it's kind of this cyclical thing where they say don't hoard, but then you're being warned you may not be able to go do
Yeah,
anything. And
I didn't go crazy with the hoarding stuff. I figured like conservatively, I got about like 30 days of stuff.
sure,
Like
and
if I get
beyond that,
and beyond that, I'm like, well, whatever. The world will still, keep turning. Everything will be fine. But now I'm hearing stories because I get to see the sort of the word on the street from each of my patients that comes in. So I get a lot of different perspectives, and I'm talking to people who are saying like they're out at Target at 7 a.m. standing in long lines to get in and get toilet paper. And I'm like, well, I don't feel so stupid for my hoarding because I don't have to do that. I don't have to. I'm not having to be out there worried about getting home, limited to one roll of,
yeah,
one pack of toilet paper or whatever like that, or the rationing stuff.
sure.
Um, it's it's a little bit of surplus. I mean, I don't think it's the dumbest thing in the world. I'm done like trying to get more than that, but I don't
So
feel that bad that I have a little bit of a sort of cushion.
sure. So let's jump into the psychology a little bit more.
Yeah,
And,
there's a go ahead.
just you had mentioned before the show, you talked a little bit about cognitive therapy and behavioral
Yeah,
therapy, and
there's this week, because it really sort of hit the fan on Monday. I feel like
sure,
people knew about it the week before, of course, and you've been following this for a long time. But I think I felt to me like it really hit the fan on Monday, and so I didn't really lose a lot of patients. But um, the um, the content of almost every one of my sessions now has to be something about COVID. Like that's a topic that just comes up.
sure,
And so I had to sort of temper different interventions, and I sort of packaged like three psychological sort of techniques that I think are pretty applicable here. The cognitive psychology. I think the catastrophizing tendencies are very, very prominent now. And so if I were to pull two people off the street, any random people, and I said, have a conversation about COVID-19, it's going to be a largely negative conversation, right? They're going to continue to talk about the types of news that they've heard, the badness of the whole situation. They'll kind of work each other up, and they'll just continue to sort of, talk about the bad stuff. They'll kind of ruminate about it, and then they kind of leave that conversation with a sort of aura of anxiety. They're just kind of saturated in it.
Sure.
And so what I would do with people this week is I would say, tell me your catastrophizing thoughts. And I'll get some popular ones where, what would I do if I got my wife sick or something like that? Or what
Sure.
would I have, like my loved one got sick? People are actually usually a little bit more concerned about others getting sick than themselves. Or sometimes they are like, I'm going to get it and I'm going to die. I have high blood pressure. That would be it for me if I got it. And also I'll work with them to create what I would call grounding thoughts, things that they can tell themselves when they start finding themselves getting worked up. So,
like what kind of grounding?
it,
Can you elaborate a little bit on grounding thoughts?
So like, let's say you start thinking about, let's say finances. This is another popular one. People are like, oh, popular. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get evicted from my house. I'm going to be out on the street begging for change. This is going to ruin me. Will I be able to pay my rent this month? And so they kind of build off all these thoughts. Those are the catastrophizing tendencies. And so I say, okay, wait, like first step is you got to recognize that you're doing it. You got to recognize that you're sort of just continuing to sort of think about all the negative stuff.
The spiral, right?
Yeah. I'd say, well, they've already issued that nobody can be evicted in the next, 60 days or whatever like that. There's no, they've suspended student loan interest, which I love. That's going to save me a lot of money. I got a lot of student loans. They're talking about sending out aid. They're talking about sending out checks. If anything did happen, nothing's going to happen soon. You're not going to be evicted at the end of March or April or May. Everybody's going to be in the same position. And so you look at it logically, they can't, evict, all these people. You're going to be fine. Whatever happens, this will blow over. People will have to make some accommodations to it. Nobody is going to come in here and just evict a bunch of people. So your grounding thought would be like, nothing's happening for the foreseeable future. Catastrophizing is a very future-oriented thing because you're uncertain of what happens in the future. And so I'd say, like, keep it a little bit more immediate. Like, you're going to be fine this week. You're not going to be evicted. Nothing's going to happen. So that's the truth. That's not being optimistic. That's just being real. The unreal part of it is the catastrophizing tendencies, where you build it up in your mind that there's this doom and gloom thing that's going to happen.
That uncertain, like 100% when you get it, that it's the game over kind of catastrophe.
Yeah. With the health thing, like, I'm going to get somebody sick. It's like, well, people care about their loved ones, but if you got it, if you get it, you're more than likely going to be fine.
So I got something for you.
Sure.
I'm gonna pivot and I'm gonna push this another direction, and I'm curious where you take this, right? So what about the I believe there's a fine line between like the panicking and like the prepping and all that to like a lot of the people I think that are like, oh, you don't need to prep, they probably had stuff in their cabinets already, in their fridge already, to where they're like, I'm good for a month if I have to. But like I said, there's a lot of people I know, college students in general, they don't have a month's supply in their cupboards, so
no.
If suddenly the government is like, be prepared, you might have to stay indoors for a month, then yeah, everybody, all these people that have been living this weekly life. But to that point, so like, how would you manage the psychology of trying to not panic or be paranoid about what could happen, but being prepared. So where do you draw the line between like excessive preparedness and um, allowing yourself to go down that route without feeling or convincing yourself that you're paranoid or panicking, or does that make sense?
Yeah. Um, the piece of prepping, I think you just have to look at it, and not let fear be your guide. Just look at it logically. Like, I said, I was ashamed that I had, loaded up my cart. I look at the situation now objectively, and it's like, I got a month's worth of stuff. I'm like, that's reasonable to me. That seems fine. Um, if I had a family and I had a lot of kids, and yeah, I would think maybe it's not unreasonable to have a little bit more than that, because who knows, maybe I let my fear be my guide a little bit, and there's some merit to that.
Sure.
Somebody like me getting 6 months of stuff, to me that would seem excessive. I think you kind of got to look at it from the outside and just say, like, okay, take away my fear in this situation. What's a reasonable conclusion to this?
If
I
you
think
have
most
to
people can kind of figure that out.
if you're stepping over pallets of canned foods in your 300 square foot apartment, maybe
Yeah.
it's gone a little overboard. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, the other thing I think that people can do, and this kind of will lead me to maybe some of the behavioral strategies that I was going to talk about, is limit your amount of exposure to the COVID coverage. So
News.
yeah, so I know people who can watch the news, they're hours a day, right? If you're watching that, like some of the news networks, I really have been irritated with them. I think they're being irresponsible when they come with this like breaking news, COVID-19, what you need to know to survive. Find out tonight at 6 o'clock. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, I understand you're trying to get ratings and stuff, but you're just amping people up.
Yeah.
You're just making them crazy. And I think
Yeah.
to some extent, like you're talking about, what do you do to be prepared? Like, yeah, be prepared. I feel like a reasonable amount of news for me to watch is like, check stuff up when I wake up in the morning, make sure that there's no major developments that I'm missing. And then in the evening, I'll DVR like the 9 o'clock or the 10 o'clock news and kind of just watch the first few minutes. Maybe I'll fast forward to some stories that like look like they might impact me. Like, one of them last night was that Golden Valley may have a shelter-in-place order, and it's like, oh, that's pertinent information. I'm glad I,
Right.
checked that out. But to be checking the news every hour at some point and going through your entire day thinking that you're going to miss something critical, um, there's not going to be some huge thing that you're not going to be aware of. Like, word will get out to you if there's something critical that you need to know.
Right.
And I think just the amount of time that people spend talking about COVID-19 or watching the news, it's like, just what's a reasonable amount for you? For me, I feel like a half an hour a day at most is what I allow myself, like 2 15-minute intervals in the morning and the evening.
Sure.
That's about it. I don't need to be watching stories of a young woman like telling her grandfather through the window of the retirement home that she just got engaged as they cry, and there's like this big emotional story. It's like, oh, I'm sorry for that. This was an actual story I saw, but I was like, I don't need to see this stuff. Like, yeah, I feel bad for her and the grandfather for, like, that's how he has to find out about his daughter's getting married. But like, how many stories like that do you need to see? It's just,
Right.
you're just exposing yourself to excess stuff that's going to just amp up your anxiety and mess with your emotions.
No, that's
So
really
the
good
other thing I'd
advice.
say is just limit your amount of exposure to the coverage.
Sure. Yes, it makes a lot of sense. We had had like you had said, we'd had plenty of our own conversations kind of leading up to this, and I leaned on your advice at one point when I reached out and I said, dude, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I'm like,
Am I going overboard or something?
yeah, have I lost it? Am I truly like losing it right now? Because I felt like I was spiraling because I'm as prepared as I can be. Um, in all the ways, right? For
Mhm.
security and for like food and for just like ready for whatever. But like you're saying, we don't know what's going to be happening in 2 weeks, let alone 2 months.
Yeah.
And as much as, I built myself up in this sense of I was watching what had been happening for now, I mean, 2 months almost. Good Lord. So for basically, I've been watching these trends, and then you see like the stuff that comes out of like Iran or Italy, and
Yeah.
now some other countries that, there is martial law and there is this, and I allowed myself to like, like spiral. And that's when I reached out to you. I reached out to a couple of my friends that I appreciate their insight and I value their insight. And you were like most of everybody, just saying, don't think you went too far over, but you might want to scale back. And it
Yeah.
was really one of the things you said, like maybe scale back how much you're paying attention to it, because it's going
Yeah.
to consume you. And
At some point, I mean, that extra information that you're getting is not useful for you.
right,
It's it's
like knowing that they're trucking the stuff that's happening in Italy and like, or Iran, and like the horrible things. Get it, got it, good, understand, prepared as much as I can, and all those around me are as prepared. And now it's just kind of like,
at a certain point, your excess knowledge becomes counterproductive. I would even say it becomes it's um, there's a syndrome people MDs they get they call it med school syndrome, where they will be studying about all the diseases and ailments, and they have it in psychology too, where you like when you're learning about psychopathology, you're reading all this stuff, and then you're like, symptoms are like, are you tired in the morning? Do you sometimes feel your muscles ache after a long day? Do you get irritable when people continuously bother? And you're like, my God, yes, I do have that. I do have this disorder. People get it when they go on WebMD sometimes too.
sure,
If they spend
yeah,
too much time on WebMD, they'll come back and they'll be like, I have cancer, stage 4 kidney cancer. I'm sure of it. And
yeah,
it's like,
like it's
no, you don't.
100% good.
You just spent forever in a day like looking over all the sort of doom and gloom stuff. Of course, it has an effect on you. You
Yeah,
think it's like yeah, just Chicken Little, like the sky is falling.
great.
But
Well, I know you're busy, and it's for those of you curious, it's late at night on Sunday, March 22nd right now, but
yeah,
this is going to come out tomorrow. I'm going to get it uploaded. Um, but I really appreciate your time, Dr. Scarborough.
yeah,
Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you were hoping to
yeah.
circle around?
One thing I kind of wanted to mention too, we're into the first week, maybe two of um, kind of quarantining ourselves a little bit. I'm
Yeah,
still getting out. A lot of people are still getting out. But my hunch is that in about another week or two, people are going to start getting a little stir crazy. They're going to start feeling a little bit Netflixed out. They're going to start getting angry or irritated with people that they're living in close proximity with for so much time. And so that can breed some mental health issues just by, not getting out, not being active, not doing things. And you don't really have a choice. So I would say um, think about what you're doing with your day. If you're forced to be isolated, don't continue to sit and watch Netflix or mess around on apps on your phone. Make sure you're thinking of, physical activities. You can do creative activities. You can do intellectual stimulating activities, some social activities. Think of, I have a list that I have of 40 things that I can keep my interest. I created this years ago. And I used it for like the winter months. Like I don't, I'm sure like in February when in Minnesota, you're like, low light conditions. I'm going, like coming back to my apartment because it's so damn cold out. You're just
yeah.
like,
Haven't had sun for 4 months, and
yeah, you
yeah,
get cabin fever. And so the remedy to that is just make sure you keep yourself stimulated in a bunch of different ways. Stay active, stay doing things. If you find yourself getting irritated with people, even if you're in the same house, try to have some, time away from people. Be able to,
sure,
I think people need to recognize that, sometimes it's a good thing to just sort of like you go to one end of the house, the other person goes to the other end of the house. You just have some alone time for your sanity. Do different things to keep different parts of your brain stimulated. Don't just fall into this sort of slump. If you do, you're very likely to start getting some depression that will set in. If you're just being inactive, you're not really doing much to keep yourself stimulated. So that would be the other thing that I would say is just make sure you offer yourself a variety of stimulating tasks and get prepared for kind of a long haul, because people are likely to be spending a lot of time indoors in the coming months. So.
Well, that is a lot of very valuable information. I really appreciate your time today, Dr. Scarbrough. And for those viewers, listeners that are still here and interested, the idea is moving forward, at least weekly, we're going to have Dr. Scarbrough on the show. And what we're hoping is that eventually there's enough engagement. We would actually do a live stream so that people could get involved. Again, he's just giving his thoughts, and if he's not going to be able to give you any clinical diagnoses or anything. This is purely for him sharing some of his thoughts. But
yeah, that'd be fun. I'd definitely be down for that.
Yeah, so ideally here moving forward, if enough people, say some stuff in the comments below or reach out to us, there's going to be his contact info as well as ours. We like to get some live sessions going, and he can do Q&As with you, the viewers. So again, thank you, Dr. Scarbrough. It's really appreciated. For those that are, for all the listeners, viewers, check the links below. You can reach out to Dr. Scarbrough, and until next time, keep doing what you're doing and try to apply some of his advice. I'm sure it'll come in handy. So take care, everybody.
Thanks.